I was wiping the last plate when I heard the sound of keys in the lock. Travis had gotten home from work earlier than usual, and I could tell by the weight of his footsteps that he wasn't in a good mood. Jessica was sitting in the living room, flipping through a magazine, oblivious to the fact that I was cleaning up after her family for the fourth hour in a row. The kitchen was sparkling clean. I'd cleaned the stove, wiped down all the surfaces, and put the dishes away. But I hadn't been praised in a long time. "Mom, why are you taking so long with the dishes?" she shouted, not taking her eyes off the glossy pages. "The kids will be home from school in half an hour, and I have a meeting with my friends." I silently put the plate in the cupboard. In the 2 years I'd lived in this house, I'd grown accustomed to that tone, though accustomed didn't mean accepted. After Richard's funeral, Jessica had insisted it would be better for me to move in with them. She talked about care, about the danger of living alone at my age, that the children missed their grandmother. It seemed to me then that my daughter really cared about me, that she wanted to make up for the loss of her father by living together. "Rachel, where's my dinner?" Travis walked into the kitchen without even saying hello. His blonde hair was disheveled, his tie was hanging crooked, and his face had a look of tired irritation on it. "I work like hell, and I can't even eat at home." "I'll heat it up," I said, opening the oven. "Chicken and vegetables, your favorite." He snorted and pulled a beer out of the fridge. He opened the can with a sharp clink and took a few big gulps. Sweat stains were visible on his shirt, his face flushed with anger or fatigue. Travis had been a manager at a car dealership for 15 years, but his career wasn't working out. Constantly complaining about his bosses, about his customers, about the economy. "Jessica, did your mother spend half the day at the store again?" he shouted toward the living room. "The grocery bills are skyrocketing." "Mom only bought the essentials," Jessica replied, but there was no defense in her voice, more like a formal excuse. "Kids grow up, they eat a lot." I set the plate down in front of Travis. The chicken was really dry. The oven in this house was uneven, and I couldn't adjust. In my old house, I had a gas stove that I'd been using for 40 years. Every dish there turned out perfectly. "The chicken is dry, and why are the carrots in such big chunks?" He poked at the vegetables with his fork. "How many times do I have to tell you that I don't like it coarsely chopped?" "Next time, I'll cut it smaller," I said quietly. Next time," he mocked. "You're 72 years old, and you still haven't learned to cook properly." The words cut, but I kept quiet. Richard was always praising my cooking, saying I was the best cook around. Friends used to come over for dinners. But Richard was gone, and no one cared what he thought. Jessica walked into the kitchen, fixed her dark hair, and looked at her watch. She looked like me when I was young, the same gray eyes, thin nose, graceful hands, but the expression on her face was completely different. Hard, calculating. Sometimes I caught myself thinking I didn't recognize my own daughter. "Mom, the kids will be back in 20 minutes. Help them with their homework and feed them. I'll be home late so you can tuck them in too." "But Kyle has a math test tomorrow," I objected. "Maybe you should study with him yourself. You know your way around a high school math program." "I have important things to do." She cut me off. "You're at home all day. What else is there to do?" Important things. In 2 years, I had learned that Jessica's important things were meeting her friends at cafes, shopping, manicures, and massages. She hadn't worked in 5 years since Travis got his promotion. She said she wanted to take care of the kids and the house, but I was the one who did all the housework. Travis hummed, looking at me over his plate. "Yeah, Rachel, you have the royal life now. A roof over your head, food, no worries." There was a sneer in his voice that was poorly concealed. "At your age, a lot of people dream of such conditions. A royal life. I'd wake up at 7:30 in the morning, make breakfast, get the kids ready for school. Then I'd clean the house, do laundry, make dinner. After lunch, more cleaning, helping the kids with their lessons, cooking dinner. By evening, I was exhausted, but no one noticed my tiredness. I used to have my own interests, friends, hobbies. Now my life was an endless series of chores. And anyway, Travis continued, it's time you realized that this isn't your home. We took you in, so have some respect for your hosts. I stood at the sink and looked out the window. It was starting to rain outside, large drops dripping down the glass. There was an old apple tree in the yard that I'd helped plant when Jessica and Travis first bought the house. Back then, they'd enjoyed every bit of advice I'd given them, asking for help with repairs, with furniture choices. It was like we were a real family. And anyway, he continued, breaking off a piece of bread, it's time you realized that this isn't your home. We took you in, so have some respect for your hosts. I turned around. Jessica was standing next to her husband, nodding in agreement. She was wearing a new dress that cost more than I spend on food in a month. Travis is right, Mom. You sometimes act like we owe you something. Her voice sounded tired, like she was explaining something obvious to an uncomprehending child. Her daughter's words hurt more than her son-in-law's rudeness. You can expect anything from a stranger, but from your own child, whom you raised, loved, supported in everything. I never thought you owed me anything, I said as calmly as I could. I'm just trying to be helpful. Helpful? Travis laughed a short, unpleasant laugh. You're eating up our money, taking up space, making a nuisance of yourself. That's what you call useful? Money. My pension went entirely to groceries for this family, clothes for the kids, the little things. I haven't bought myself anything in over a year. Tearing out old clothes, saving money on everything. But that wasn't enough for Travis. You know what pisses me off the most? He pushed his plate away, leaned back in his chair. You live here like a freeloader, and you act like you're doing us a favor. You don't cook properly. You don't clean properly. You don't know how to do anything with the kids. At that moment, the front door slammed. There was the sound of children's voices, the stomping of feet, the clinking of keys on a shelf in the hallway. Grandma Rachel, shouted 8-year-old Kyle, running into the kitchen. What's for afternoon snack? Lao cookies and milk, I replied, trying to smile. The kids weren't to blame for their parents' behavior, and I didn't want my problems to reflect on them. 10-year-old Mia walked by silently, tossed her backpack on a chair, and pulled out her phone. She was a carbon copy of Jessica, not only in looks, but also in personality. Even at that age, she was able to look down, to speak with the tone of an adult who knew her own worth. Sometimes there was something cold, calculating in her gaze. Kyle, go wash your hands, Jessica said, kissing the top of his head. Grandma will help you with your homework. A mother's affection went only to the children. Jessica spoke to me dryly, aloofly, as if I were a stranger. When she was little, I spent hours reading her stories, making doll dresses, inventing games. Now she barely gives me a glance. Where are my cookies? The boy asked, climbing up on the chair. I'll get them, I said, pulling a package from the cupboard. Not those, Kyle said crankily. I want the chocolate ones, the ones with the cream inside, the blue ones. They're gone. They ran out yesterday. Mom! Kyle turned to Jessica with a hurt look on his face. Grandma didn't buy my favorite cookies. Mom! My daughter looked at me sternly. You know what Kyle likes. Why didn't she? I only bought what was on the list, I explained. Those cookies weren't on the list. Then you should have taken the initiative, Travis interjected, finishing his dinner. Or do you have a memory problem? Sclerosis, as they say. Mia looked up from the phone and looked at me with cold curiosity. There was no childlike directness in her gaze, more of a scientific interest. Grandma, is it true that old people become forgetful? she asked in such a tone as if she was discussing an interesting biological fact. The internet says that after 70, the brain begins to work worse. Mia, don't be silly, Jessica said, but there was no real indignation in her voice. It was more like an automatic retort for good measure. I poured milk into a glass for Kyle and set a plate of plain cookies in front of him. The boy grimaced and twirled the cookies in his hands, but he ate. He was a kind child, unlike his older sister, and he hadn't yet absorbed his parents' cynicism. Tomorrow I'll buy your favorite ones, I promised. What are we going to do today? Kyle whined. I wanted them. They have such a delicious filling. Don't be cranky, Jessica told him. Grandma would buy them tomorrow. Travis finished his beer and got up from the table, leaving his plate half full. He never finished what I cooked, always finding faults. It was oversalted or undersalted, overcooked or raw. I used to get frustrated, try to guess his tastes. Now I just cook as I know how. The chicken is really dry, he said as he passed me, and less salt next time. I've got blood pressure and cut the vegetables smaller. How many times do I have to tell you? I cleared his plate, though most of the dinner was still intact. Throwing the food away was painful. As a child, my mother had taught me to appreciate every piece of bread. But here, no one cared about my opinion. Jessica gathered her purse and headed for the exit. She wore new high-heeled shoes on her feet and gold bracelets on her wrist. Don't wait up for me, she said over her shoulder, and make sure the kids go to bed on time. Kyle has an early start tomorrow. The door slammed shut. The house grew quieter, with only the sounds of chewing and the ticking of the clock on the wall. It was just me and the kids, as it happened every night. Kyle finished his cookies and ran to his room to turn on the computer. Mia was still sitting with her phone, fingers rapidly typing messages. Mia, it's time to do your homework, I said softly. Later, the girl replied without looking up. I have an important message. A friend is asking about the party tomorrow. I didn't insist. The last 2 years have taught me to pick my battles. It's pointless to fight with children. They copy their parents' behavior and know perfectly well that I have no real power. If Mia doesn't want to do her homework, her parents will find a way to put the blame on me. The next day started as usual, with making breakfast and getting the kids ready for school. Kyle couldn't find his math book. Mia was cranky about her hair, and Jessica was nervous because she was late for her appointment with the beautician. Travis sipped his coffee in silence, occasionally casting disgruntled glances at the family bustle. His face looked wrinkled from last night's beer, dark circles under his eyes. Rachel, where are Kyle's school uniforms? Jessica shouted from the hallway. The shirt was dirty, and I didn't have a spare anywhere. I got up from the table where I was helping the boy with breakfast and went to check the closet. The spare shirt was hanging in its place, but Jessica must not have bothered to look for it. Here it is, I said, holding out a clean shirt. Why wasn't it with the rest of my stuff? I asked my daughter irritably. I don't have time to go through closets. Travis hummed, setting the cup aside. The organization is top-notch, he murmured, just like a decent house should be. The children finally gathered, and the house emptied. Jessica left on her own, and Travis went to work, slamming the door a little harder than usual. I put breakfast away, loaded the dishwasher, wiped down the table. There was a silence in the house that should have brought peace, but instead was weighing down on my shoulders with the weight of accumulated fatigue. By lunchtime, I was done cleaning and decided to rest a little. I sat in a chair by the window with a book I'd been meaning to read for a long time. The sun was shining outside the window. Birds were chirping in the branches of apple trees. For a few minutes, I felt like a human being, not a domestic servant. Around 4 in the afternoon, the children returned. Kyle talked excitedly about his A in math. The test had been a success. Mia was silent, staring at her phone. I fed them an afternoon snack, helped them with their homework, and listened to Kyle talk about his school friends. Just a normal, quiet day, the likes of which we didn't have many. Jessica came back at 6 p.m. in high spirits. Her new haircut and manicure had clearly lifted her spirits. She even smiled at me when I asked her how her day was. Great, Mom. Saw Sarah. She invited me to her birthday party on Saturday. Jessica fixed her hair in front of the mirror in the hallway. You'll watch the kids, right? Of course I will. There were no other options. I nodded and went to make dinner. Tonight I decided to make baked fish and potatoes, a dish everyone usually liked. I turned on the oven, peeled the vegetables, and spiced the fish. Travis showed up about 7:30, but it was clear he'd had a nightmare day. His face was red, his movements harsh, his clothes smelled of tobacco smoke. He walked into the living room without saying hello to anyone, collapsed into a chair, and turned the TV up to full volume. Trav, what's up? Jessica asked, peering out of the kitchen. Disgusting, he bellowed. That asshole Mitchell had blown the deal again. The customer was almost ready to buy, and that idiot started talking to him about options. Now the customer thinks we're screwing him over. Why don't we have dinner? Jessica suggested a cautious suggestion. I better get properly drunk first, Travis muttered. Alcohol was the only thing that saved me from days like this. He went into the kitchen for a beer. I was standing at the stove stirring the garnish when he opened the refrigerator. The cans rattled and there was a clamor of discontent. Where's the beer? He asked demandingly. It ran out yesterday, I answered without turning around. What do you mean, finished? His voice became threatening. I told you to buy a case. You asked me to buy beer and I bought a 6-pack. 6 cans? Travis slammed the refrigerator door so hard the bottles inside rattled. What the hell is 6 cans? Normal people buy cases. I turned around. His face was bloodshot, his fists clenched. It was at times like this that he got really scary. The list just said beer, I explained. It didn't say how much. List, he mocked. Don't you have the brains to think for yourself? The man works like a horse and can't even get a decent drink at home. Travis, calm down, Jessica intervened. I'll run to the store and get a beer. No, he yelled. I'm tired of this irresponsibility. It's the same thing every day. The food isn't good. The things I need aren't there. The cleaning is a mess. The kids were quiet in their rooms. Kyle looked out into the hallway, but quickly hid, sensing the tense atmosphere. Mia turned the sound in her headphones up louder. They were used to scenes like this by now. Travis pulled out a bottle of whiskey from his locker that he saved for special occasions. He poured a generous amount into the glass, took a swig, grimaced, and poured another. You know what pisses me off the most, Rachel? He turned to me, swaying. You live here like a parasite, and you can't even do the basic things right. I try to do things right, I said quietly. You do? He laughed a drunken laugh. Fish burns in the oven, potatoes fall apart, and you try? I quickly opened the oven. The fish was indeed slightly browned more than it needed to be, but it was far from burning. The potatoes looked fine. It's okay, I said. It's ready to serve. All right. Travis came closer, reeking of alcohol and anger. You're gonna contradict me? Trav, come on. Jessica tried to intervene. Dinner's ready. The kids are hungry. Not enough, he shouted. I work all day to support this family, and at home, I get nothing but trouble. Your mother has turned my house into a mess. I took the fish out of the oven and put it on a plate. My hands were shaking a little, but I tried not to show it. The main thing was not to provoke him any further. And anyway, Travis continued, pouring himself another whiskey, why should I put up with an old woman in my house who only spends money and does nothing useful? Mom helps a lot with the kids and the household, Jessica said uncertainly. Does she? He turned to his wife. She can't do the most basic thing. Buying beer is a problem. Cooking is a problem. Supervise the kids. Mia got a D in history yesterday. That wasn't true. Mia didn't have any F's, but I didn't mind. Travis could say anything in his condition. Trav, why don't we eat first, and then we can talk about it? Jessica suggested it. Eat that stuff? He pointed his finger at the fish. I'd rather go to a restaurant. At least they know how to cook. Daddy, can we eat? Kyle asked timidly when he came into the kitchen. I'm already hungry. Sure, son. Travis changed immediately. Sit down at the table. Grandma's gonna give you what she made. He said it like he was doing me a favor. The kids sat down at the table, and I put the food on their plates. The fish was quite edible, the potatoes too. But Travis was picking defiantly with his fork, wrinkling his face after each bite. See, Kyle, he said to his son, that's no way to cook. When you get married, pick a wife who can cook, not like some people. The boy blinked incomprehensibly, shifting his gaze from his father to me. Mia continued eating, pretending that nothing was happening. Travis, the kids can hear. Jessica tried to reason with him. Let them hear, he shouted. Let them know how not to behave. Let them know what it means to respect the owners of the house. The whiskey had clearly gone to his head. His words became slurred, his movements sprawling. He stood up from the table, swayed, and grabbed the back of his chair. All my life I dreamed of a normal family, he mumbled. And what did I get? A wife who goes to beauty parlors all day long. A mother-in-law who can't even buy beer properly. Dad, you promised you'd help me with math, Kyle said, clearly trying to change the subject. Math? Travis looked at his son with cloudy eyes. What do you need math for if Grandma can't do her homework? Maybe math would help her buy the right beer? He laughed again at his joke. Jessica got up from the table. Kids, go to your room. You can eat later. Where are they going? Travis was indignant. I'm talking to my son. I'm explaining life to him. You're drunk, Jessica said bluntly. Go sleep it off. Drunk? His face twisted with rage. Who drove me to this state? Who made a mess of my house? He turned toward me, took a few unsteady steps. There was anger in his eyes, mixed with alcoholic fog. You, he jabbed a finger in my direction. You've made my life a living hell. You're the reason I'm in trouble every day. Travis, calm down, I said as calmly as I could. Calm down? His voice trailed off into a scream. After everything you've done? After ruining my whole day with your stupidity? The kids quickly disappeared into their rooms. Jessica stood by the table, nervously rubbing her napkin. The air in the kitchen became thick with tension. Travis stood in front of me, swaying, his breathing heavy and ragged. The smell of whiskey mixed with sweat and anger. I tried to move toward the sink, but he blocked my path with his arms spread wide. Stay where you are, he growled. We weren't done talking. Trav, stop. Jessica shifted nervously from foot to foot. The kids will hear. Let them hear, he shouted without turning around. Let them know what kind of grandmother they have. Let them realize that there are people in life who only spoil everything around them. I remained silent, staring at the floor. 45 years ago, I'd learned not to react to drunken antics. My father liked to drink and take it out on people around him. I'd sworn to myself then that I would never tolerate such behavior from my husband. And I didn't. Richard was a calm, kind man. But life has ordered so that at 72 years old, I again have to stand in front of a drunken man and wait for his rage to end. You know what I don't like most about your behavior? Travis continued, taking another step closer. You act like it's not your fault, like we're the bad guys and you're the saint. I don't think anyone is bad, I said quietly. You don't? He leaned toward me, his face a few centimeters from mine. Maybe it's time to start thinking. Maybe it's time to realize that you're not wanted here. Jessica moved closer, but didn't interfere. I couldn't see any sympathy or protection in her eyes, only irritation at the scene. It's the same thing every day, Travis mumbled. I get up for work, working like hell to support my family. And at home? There's nothing but trouble at home. My wife spends money on nonsense. My mother-in-law can't even do basic things properly. I try to help as much as I can. I tried to object. You do? His voice got even louder. Is that what you call trying? Burned food? Forgotten groceries? Messy house? The food isn't burned and the house is clean. I couldn't take it anymore. Those words were the catalyst. Travis's face contorted with rage, and he straightened sharply. You're contradicting me? He shouted. In my own house, I'm being contradicted? Trav, be quiet. Jessica tried to reason with him. The neighbors will hear. I don't care about the neighbors. He waved his hand. I have the right to say what I want in my own house. The alcohol had clearly taken its toll. Travis lost control of his voice, and his movements became sloppy and imprecise. He grabbed the edge of the table to keep his balance. I work all my life, he mumbled, to support my family, to pay for my house, my car, everything. And what do I get in return? Nothing but reproaches and resentment. Nobody's giving you a hard time, Jessica said. No reproach? He turned to his wife. What was that yesterday when you said that Serena's family had a new car? And the day before yesterday when you complained that we hadn't gone on vacation in a while? I was just sharing the news, Jessica replied, confused. Sharing the news, he mocked. What am I, stupid, not getting the message? Everyone wants more money, a better life, and no one wants to work. I stood at the sink with my back against the countertop. Travis turned to me again, his eyes cloudy. Especially you. He pointed his finger in my direction. You live on your own, and you act like a princess. I'm not acting like a princess, I said. Yes, you are, he shouted. You turn your nose up at work. You don't know how to bring up children. You cook disgustingly. And if you ask something, immediately offended Mina. Muffled sounds came from the children's rooms. Kyle turned up the music. Mia was on the phone. They were obviously trying not to hear what was going on in the kitchen. You know what I'm gonna tell you, Rachel? Travis took a step toward me. I'm sick of you being in this house. I'm sick of seeing your sour face every day. Travis, don't say too much, Jessica warned me. What's too much? He looked back at his wife. I'm telling you the truth. Your mother has turned our house into a madhouse. It's not fair, I said quietly. Unfair? He laughed a drunken laugh. Is it fair that I have to support you? Is it fair that you spend our money and give us nothing in return? Mom pays for the groceries with her pension. Jessica suddenly interceded. Pension? Travis snorted. Her miserable pension covers about a quarter of the cost. Who pays the rest? He stepped even closer. I could feel the heat of his anger, see the bloodshot eyes. At times like that, he lost all humanity. Every day I get up at 7:30 in the morning, he said, pointing his finger at my chest. I go to work, where I am humiliated, insulted, where I have to smile at idiots who buy cars, all day on my feet, all day stressed. And for what? To support a family where no one appreciates me. We appreciate you, Jessica tried to say. Appreciate you? He turned to her. You spend all day at beauty parlors, spending money on crap. Your mother can't even buy beer like you asked. I bought beer, I objected. I just didn't know you needed a lot. I didn't know, Travis exploded. What's your head for? For beauty? A man asks for beer, so you have to buy the right amount, not 3 cans. It was 6 cans, I corrected. 6, 3, it doesn't matter, he shouted. The main thing is that you've ruined everything again. His face turned crimson. His hands clenched into fists, sweat dripping down his forehead. Alcohol and rage had turned him into a completely uncontrollable man. You know what, Rachel? He growled. I'm sick of your presence. I'm sick of your stupidity every day. Trav, calm down. Jessica tried to get between us. Stay out of it, he shouted. I'm explaining some things to your mother. He turned to me again, coming very close. He reeked of booze and sweat and anger. You think you can live here like a parasite and do nothing? He asked, poking me in the shoulder with his finger. I'm doing everything I can, I replied. Everything you can? He poked my shoulder harder. Can you stop messing up my life? Travis, stop it. Jessica tried to intervene. No, it's not enough, he yelled. I'm sick of this. He shoved me with both hands into his chest. It was harder than I expected. I lost my balance and tried to grab the edge of the table, but I didn't have time. The fall was short and painful. I hit the left side of my face on the edge of a kitchen cabinet and then my shoulder on the floor. I lay there for a few seconds, not realizing what had happened. My head was ringing and my left cheek was throbbing with pain. Slowly, I realized that I was lying on the kitchen floor with Travis standing over me, breathing heavily. Oh my God. Jessica breathed out. Mom, are you okay? I rose slowly, holding onto the wall. My cheek was on fire, and my mouth tasted of blood. I touched my face, and my fingers were wet. Did you finally get it? Travis asked, still breathing hard. Or do you need more explanation? What are you doing? Jessica exclaimed. Mom's bleeding. It's your own fault, he muttered. You made a man mad. I got to the sink and looked in the mirror next to it. My left cheek was swollen shut, and there was a dark spot under my eye. My lip was smashed, blood oozing from a small wound. Mom, let's treat it, Jessica said, pulling out the first aid kit. There's nothing to treat, Travis snapped at her. It's nothing. Maybe now he'd know how to behave. Jessica silently handed me a damp washcloth. I dabbed at the blood and applied a cold compress to my cheek. The pain was intense, but bearable. See where your antics get you? Jessica said quietly, but so Travis could hear. Getting your husband into this state. Her words stunned me more than the blow. My daughter blamed me for what happened. I didn't do anything special, I whispered. What do you mean, nothing? Jessica raised her voice. You saw that Travis was having a rough day, that he was nervous. Why would you argue with him? That's right, her husband chimed in. A smart man in that situation would have kept his mouth shut. I stood at the sink, holding the compress to my face, and I couldn't believe what was happening. I was pushed, I was injured, and they're accusing me of provocation. Now, the neighbors might think something bad because of you, Jessica continued. If someone sees the bruises, they'll start talking. What's there to think about? Travis shouted. It's just a family fight. Happens in every home. A family fight. He called it a family fight. I spent a restless night tossing and turning on the uncomfortable couch in the guest room. The left side of my face throbbed with pain, and every touch on the pillow was a sharp discomfort. By morning, the swelling had gotten worse, and a bruise spread from my cheekbone to my lower eyelid. In the mirror, I was looking back at an unfamiliar woman with a disfigured face. Travis got up early and left for work without even looking in my direction. He acted like nothing had happened. He drank coffee at breakfast, read the news on his phone, and occasionally had a few words with Jessica. Just a normal morning for a normal family, except I was sitting with a compress on my face, trying not to draw attention to myself. Mom, why don't you try some foundation? Jessica suggested as she was getting the kids ready for school. I have a thick one that does a good job of coloring. She talked about it as calmly as if it were a minor scratch, not about the aftermath of her husband pushing an elderly woman and smashing her face in. Thanks, I'll give it a try, I replied. Kyle watched my face curiously, but he didn't ask any questions. Kids in this house learned quickly not to be interested in unpleasant details. Mia cast one indifferent glance and went back to her phone. If anyone asks what happened to your face, tell them you fell at home, Jessica advised before leaving. People like to gossip, so don't give them an excuse. The house was empty, and I was alone with my thoughts and my pain. I tidied up the kitchen, though every tilt of my head was agony. Loaded the laundry, made dinner. Habitual actions helped me not to think about what had happened, but I couldn't distract myself completely. Around 11 o'clock in the morning, the doorbell rang. I looked out the window and saw a familiar car, the black sedan my eldest son drove. My heart beat faster with a mixture of joy and anxiety. Daniel didn't come by often, usually giving me advance notice. I quickly checked the foundation on my face. Jessica hadn't lied. The foundation was thick and masked the bruises well, but it couldn't hide the swelling completely. Mommy? Daniel hugged me on the doorstep, and I cringed at the pain in my shoulder. How are you doing? You look good. He'd always been an attentive son. Even as a child, he'd noticed the slightest change in my mood. Now his dark eyes were scrutinizing my face. I'm fine, I replied, trying to smile naturally. Come in, do you want coffee? Sure. He took off his jacket and hung it on the rack. Where is everyone? Nobody home. Travis is at work. Jessica's away on business. The kids are at school. I went into the kitchen, turned on the coffee maker. You didn't tell me you were coming. I thought I'd surprise you. He smiled. I had a client drop out, and the day was free. Thought I hadn't been by in a while. Daniel worked for an insurance company, dealing with complicated cases, often traveling on business. He was successful, self-sufficient, lived in Portland with his wife and 2 kids. He visited us once every 2 or 3 months, usually on the weekends. Mom, what happened to your face? He suddenly asked, looking at me intently. What do you mean? I tried to look away, pretending to look for something in my locker. My left cheek looks swollen, and something's wrong with my eye. Damn it. Daniel's always been observant. His profession taught him to notice details. The foundation probably wasn't as perfect as Jessica thought. I fell yesterday badly, I lied. Slipped in the bathroom, hit the sink. He stepped closer, scrutinizing my face, his eyebrows furrowed. Mom, that doesn't look like a fall injury. The bruise looks weird. It's not weird, it's normal. I stepped back to the coffee maker. It was just ugly. Daniel didn't say anything, but I could feel his gaze on me. He sat down at the table, taking a cup of coffee, but he didn't stop studying my face. When exactly did you fall? He asked. Last night, after dinner. And no one helped you? Didn't call a doctor? Why a doctor? It was nothing. I just put some ice on it and it went away. No, it didn't. You have severe swelling and hemorrhaging. I sat across from him, trying to be natural. But Daniel didn't take his eyes off me, and I knew he didn't believe a word I said. Around noon, Jessica returned. When she heard voices in the kitchen, she came in and hugged her brother. Dan, what a surprise, she exclaimed. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, Jess, he smiled. I thought I'd come visit. Great. Will you stay for dinner? Travis will be happy. Sure, Daniel nodded. By the way, what happened to Mom? She says she fell. Jessica gave me a quick glance. Yeah, it was an accident, she said in a light tone. She slipped in the bathroom, and I told her I should have put a mat in there. That's a serious injury for a fall, Daniel said. Oh, come on, Jessica said. Mom's an old woman. Her bones are fragile. Any bump leaves marks. She said it so naturally, it was almost believable. But I could see Daniel's shoulders tense. Did you call a doctor? Why? Jessica wondered. It wasn't that bad. They treated it, put some ice on it. Mom said she didn't need a doctor. They ruled out concussion? Dan, you're being overdramatic. Jessica laughed. It was just a fall in the bathtub. Who doesn't? Daniel nodded, but I could see he wasn't calming down. He kept glancing at my face from time to time, studying the bruise. Around 6 p.m., the kids came back. Kyle rushed happily over to his uncle, talking about school and a new computer game. Mia said hello discreetly but politely. Daniel always got along well with his nephews. Uncle Dan, what about Grandma? Kyle asked, noticing my face. She has a bruise. Grandma fell, Jessica answered before anyone else could say anything. Slipped in the bathroom. Did it hurt? The boy asked sympathetically. A little. I smiled at him. But it's better now. Mia looked at my face, then at my mother, then at my uncle. There was a flicker of understanding in her gaze, but she didn't say anything. At 7:30, Travis showed up. When he saw Daniel, he smiled broadly and shook his hand. Dan, you look great, he greeted his son-in-law. How are things in Portland? I'm fine, but there's a lot of work, Daniel answered. And how are you? We can't complain, Travis waved his hand. Working, raising kids. It's just a normal life. He looked as calm as if nothing had happened. Work must have calmed his nerves down at work. Didn't even look at my face. My mom told me she fell yesterday, Daniel said. Yeah, it was a bad story. Travis nodded. Jessica and I were in the living room when we heard the crash. When we came running, she was in the bathroom. It's a good thing she didn't do any serious damage. He said it so convincingly that I began to doubt my own memories. Had I really just fallen in the bathtub? The bathroom is a dangerous place for the elderly, Daniel agreed. The injury statistics were impressive. We sat down to dinner. It was the usual family atmosphere around the table. Travis told jokes from work. Jessica shared news from her friends. The kids chatted about school. I was silent, occasionally answering direct questions. Daniel was engaged in the conversation, but I could feel his attention focused on me. He noticed every gesture I made, every expression on my face. I caught his scrutinizing gaze a few times. Do you remember, Dan, how you used to fall off your bike all the time when you were a kid? Jessica laughed. Mom was always working on your knees. I remember, he smiled. But I was a boy then. It's normal to fall like that when you're 7. Even now, Travis interjected, life is unpredictable. Especially when you're older, Jessica added. Coordination isn't what it used to be, and reactions slow down. Daniel looked at my face again. Mom, are you sure you fell in the bathroom? He asked suddenly. There was an awkward pause. Travis stopped chewing. Jessica froze with her fork in her hand. Of course I did, I said. Where else? It's just that the nature of the injuries aren't really consistent with a fall on a slippery surface, he said calmly. More like hitting a vertical surface. Dan, you're not a doctor. Jessica laughed. How do you know so much? I have to deal with all kinds of cases in my job, he shrugged. You learn to recognize the types of injuries. Travis put down his fork. What are you trying to say? He asked with a slight chuckle. Nothing much, Daniel answered. I'm just wondering about my mother's health. Mom's fine, Jessica said firmly. It was just a little spat between her and the bathroom floor. She grinned at her own joke. Travis backed her up with a laugh. Right, he agreed. Just a little spat. Nothing serious. Daniel stared at them both for a long moment. Then he turned his eyes to me. Mom, do you have anything to add to this story? I felt everyone at the table freeze, waiting for my answer. Mom, do you have anything to add to this story? Daniel asked, a subtle insistence in his voice. I remained silent, feeling the stares of everyone present. Jessica was smiling strained, Travis was cutting meat defiantly, and the kids were looking at each other curiously. The air at the table was thick with tension. No, I finally answered. It was the right thing to say. Daniel nodded, but I could see he didn't believe it. His dark eyes, so much like the late Richard's, continued to study my face. As a child, he'd had an amazing ability to sense lies. That trait had apparently persisted. Dinner continued in a more relaxed atmosphere. Travis talked about the weekend plans. Jessica discussed the bedroom renovations. Normal family conversations, but I participated mechanically, thinking about how long I could keep the truth from my eldest son. After dinner, the children went to their rooms to do their homework. Jessica went into the living room to watch TV. Travis sat down next to her with the sports channel on. I started to clear the table when Daniel came up to me. Mom, need a hand? He offered. Thanks, I'll be fine. I insist, he smiled, taking the plates. It had been a long time since we'd done dishes together. We worked in silence. I rinsed the dishes, he toweled them off. From the living room came the sound of television and muffled voices. An ordinary evening with an ordinary family, except for my broken face and the heavy air of understatement. Mom, Daniel said quietly when we were done with the dishes, can we talk? Alone? My heart beat faster. I knew this conversation was inevitable, but I was still dreading it. About what? I asked, trying to sound calm. About your face, about what really happened. Dan, I explained. Mom, he interrupted. I'm not a kid. I've seen enough injuries to know the difference. This is not a fall mark. I turned back to the window. It was starting to get dusk outside, and the streetlights were coming on. Children were playing somewhere, their voices ringing. The usual evening life of an ordinary neighborhood. Let's go to the garden, Daniel suggested. Let's get some fresh air. We went out the back door. The garden was small but well tended. I'd planted most of the plants myself. Flower beds of fall flowers, an old apple tree, a small pond with goldfish. Once this place brought me joy. Now it just seemed like a beautiful backdrop for someone else's life. Mom, Daniel said as we walked away from the house, tell me the truth. Who hit you? His directness took me by surprise. I'd expected careful questions, a gradual unraveling of the circumstances, but my son got right to the point. No one hit me. I tried to deny it. I did fall. Mom, his voice became harder. Don't lie to me. I have eyes. A bruise under my left eye, an abrasion on my lip, swelling on my cheek. Those are the marks of a blow, not a fall. I was silent, staring at the pond. Fish swam slowly in the dark water, occasionally surfacing for food. If you won't tell me, I'll find a way to find out, Daniel continued. I can talk to the neighbors, to the kids, or I could just call the police and report suspected domestic violence. Don't, I said quickly. Leave the police out of this. Then tell me, what really happened? I closed my eyes, gathering my courage. Months of silence, of pretending everything was okay, and now it was time to tell the truth. For the first time in 2 years, I had the chance to tell someone what had happened in that house. Travis, I breathed out. He pushed me last night. Daniel froze. I could see his shoulders tense, his fists clenched. Did he push you hard? He asked quietly. I fell, hit a locker. I see. Why did he do that? I talked about last night the beer that wasn't in the right amount. Travis's drunken rage, his accusations. She spoke slowly, struggling to choose her words. Saying those things out loud was painful. "And what did Jessica say?" Daniel asked when I was done. She, I hesitated. She said it was my fault, that I shouldn't have argued with him. My fault, he repeated bitterly. For buying 6 cans of beer instead of a case. Dan, please don't make a big deal out of it. It was really just a fight. Just a fight? He turned to me. Mom, he hit you. A 72-year-old woman. He didn't hit me. He pushed me. I corrected him. And he was drunk, out of control. Is that an excuse? I didn't know what to say. In 2 years of living in this house, I had learned to justify many things. Rudeness, humiliation, disrespect. All of it seemed like the price for a roof over my head. Mom, Daniel said more softly, is this the first time? What do you mean? The first time he pushed you or hit you? Yes, I answered quickly. Before he only yelled. Only yelled, my son repeated bitterly. How often did he yell? That question made me think. When did the screaming become commonplace? When did I stop seeing them as something abnormal? Sometimes, I answered vaguely. Mom, Daniel took my hands in his. Tell me honestly, how are you treated in this house? His hands were warm, strong, just like his father's. For the first time in a long time, I felt protected, supported by someone close to me. I started and stopped. It's hard for them with me. I eat too much. I take up space. I'm a hassle. Who told you that? Travis, and Jessica sometimes too. Mom, Daniel's voice got hard. You're not a parasite. You're not a freeloader. You're a mother of two, a grandmother, a woman who deserves respect. Tears came to my eyes. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to me in that tone of voice, with love, with understanding. Tell me in detail, he asked, how your days here are going. And I did. About getting up at 7:30, making breakfast for the family, cleaning the house, doing laundry, making dinner, about picking up the kids from school, helping them with their homework, making dinner, putting the kids to bed when Jessica goes out with her friends. Do you have any free time? Daniel asked. Not much, I answered. Sometimes I can read or watch TV. And friends? Hobbies? I wondered. When was the last time I'd seen my friends? When did I do knitting or gardening? Things that used to bring me joy. No time, I admitted. And it's not convenient to go out. Jessica might need my help. It's inconvenient, Daniel repeated. Are they interested in your needs? What do you mean? Do they ask what you want for dinner? What do you want to watch on TV? Where do you want to go this weekend? I didn't say anything. No one had asked my opinion in a very long time. Mom, Daniel said quietly, this isn't life. It's exploitation. Don't say that, I objected. They gave me a home. They take care of me. Taking care of you? There was irony in his voice. Mom, you're being used as a free housekeeper, and when you don't live up to their expectations, they humiliate you and beat you. Dan, please, tell me honestly, he interrupted. Are you happy here? The question took me by surprise. Am I happy? When was the last time I thought about happiness? Yeah, I don't know, I admitted. When was the last time you were happy? I tried to remember. Maybe in the first months after I'd moved here, when I'd still hoped for family warmth, or before Richard died, when we were living in our own house. A long time ago, I said quietly. Had you cried? When was the last time you cried? The question came out of the blue. I looked at my son, and he was studying my face with an attentive gaze. I don't remember, I lied. In fact, I cried every night, quietly, into my pillow, so no one would hear. I cried from fatigue, from humiliation, from loneliness, because life had become an endless series of chores without joy or meaning. Mom, Daniel put his arm around my shoulders. This has to stop. What do you want to do? I was scared. I don't know yet, but it can't go on like this. We stood in the garden, arms around each other, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something like hope. Daniel had always been a determined boy. If he said something had to change, then something would change. Just please, I asked, don't make a scene. I still have to live in this house. We'll see, he said evasively. Jessica's voice came from inside. Mom, where are you? Dan, come on, coffee's ready. Come on, Daniel shouted. We'll be right there. We headed toward the house. I walked and thought about the fact that I had told someone the truth about my life for the first time in 2 years. It was scary and relieving at the same time. Dan, I said as we got to the door, you won't tell anyone about our conversation. Mom, I'm not a child. I know what I can and can't say. What are you going to do? He stopped on the threshold, turned to me. For starters, I'm going to stay here for a few days, see for myself how you're treated. And then? Then we'll decide what to do next, he said, and opened the door. The next morning, Daniel announced at breakfast that he'd decided to stay a few days. Travis was clearly unhappy with the news, though he tried not to show it. Jessica pretended to be pleased, but I could tell that her brother's presence was making her tense. Of course you can stay, she said with a strained smile. You're always welcome. Thanks, Daniel said, spreading butter on his toast. I just have a few days to spare. I haven't spent time with my family in a while. Travis hummed, finishing his coffee. Where are you staying? The guest room's taken. He nodded in my direction. Dan can stay in the study, Jessica suggested quickly. The couch folds out there. Great, Daniel agreed, as long as it's not too cramped. His words sounded innocent, but I could see the hidden meaning in them. He was hinting at something, but he wasn't saying it directly. After breakfast, Travis left for work, slamming the door a little harder than usual. Jessica got ready to go to the beautician. She had an appointment for a facial. The kids were off to school. Daniel and I were the only ones left in the house. Show me the deed to the house, he asked when we were alone. Why? I wondered. Just curious to see. I hadn't seen my dad's papers in a while. I went to my room and pulled a folder of papers out of the closet. Richard always kept all the important papers neatly organized. The will, the deed to the house, the insurance papers, everything was in perfect order. Daniel studied the documents carefully, lingering especially on the will. His face remained calm, but I could see that he was thinking about something. Mom, he said finally, do you remember what Dad's will says? I do, I nodded. He left me the house and all the property. Does Jessica know? Of course she knows. She was at the reading of the will. What did she say? I tried to remember that day. It was so hard. The funeral had just ended. The notary was reading my husband's last will. Jessica was sitting next to me, holding my hand, comforting me. She told me that Daddy had done the right thing, that I deserved to be safe in my old age. Does she remember that now? Daniel asked with a touch of irony. What do you mean? What Travis said yesterday about his house, about you living here at their mercy? I didn't say anything. Really, lately, both Jessica and Travis had been talking as if the house belonged to them, like they were doing me a favor by letting me live here. They probably just forgot, I said uncertainly. Forgotten? Daniel grinned. Mom, people don't forget who owns real estate. They pretend to forget. He folded the documents neatly back into the folder. I'll remind them tonight, he added calmly. Dan, don't. I was afraid. Why bring it up? Just so they'd remember who's the boss and who should be grateful to whom. His voice was so confident, I knew it was useless to change his mind. Daniel had made his decision, and he would carry it out. The day went smoothly. Daniel helped me with chores, talked to the kids about their studies, and went to the store for groceries. He acted like a loving son taking care of his mother, but I sensed he was preparing for an important conversation. Jessica returned around 4 o'clock in high spirits. Her new manicure and renewed hair color had clearly lifted her spirits. She even brought a cake from the pastry shop for dinner. Dan, you like chocolate cake, don't you? She asked, pulling out the box. Of course I do, he smiled. Thank you for thinking that, but I could see it. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He was polite, courteous, but he held himself aloof. The kids came home from school in good spirits. Kyle got an A in English. Mia was invited to a classmate's birthday party, the usual childhood joys that made the house livelier. Uncle Dan, are you staying the weekend? Kyle asked over his afternoon snack. Maybe, Daniel answered. Depends on the circumstances. And what circumstances might that be? Mia asked. Different ones, Daniel replied evasively. Adult stuff. Travis showed up around 7:30. He looked tired, but not as aggressive as yesterday. He said hello to everyone, asked about business. Typical family night. At dinner, the atmosphere was relaxed. Travis talked about work, Jessica about meeting a friend. The kids shared school news. Daniel was participating in the conversation, but I could tell he was waiting for the right moment. By the way, he said as we finished our cake, I went through Dad's files today. Why? Jessica wondered. I wanted to make sure everything was in order. Insurance, will, title deeds, and everything was in order? Travis asked with a slight chuckle. It's all there, Daniel nodded. Dad was a very neat man. Every document was in perfect condition. Good, Jessica said. Mom's not very good at this kind of thing. On the contrary, Daniel argued, Mom is very good at it. She knows every piece of paper, remembers every detail of the will. He paused, sipped his coffee. For example, she remembers that the house belongs to her. There was silence. Travis stopped chewing. Jessica froze with a cup in her hands. The children looked at each other, not understanding why the adults were suddenly silent. Of course he remembers, Jessica said at last. What's the big deal? It's not a big deal, Daniel shrugged. It's just that sometimes you seem to forget about it. Forget what? Travis tensed. Who owns this house? Who the real owner is? The atmosphere at the table changed dramatically. Where before there had been a family calm, now the air was filled with tension. Dan, what does this have to do with this? Jessica asked irritably. I heard some interesting things yesterday, he replied calmly, about Mom living here at your mercy, about how this is your house and she's a freeloader. Travis blushed. I didn't say anything like that, he began. Yes, you did, Daniel interrupted, and not just yesterday. Mom told me a lot of interesting things about the way you treat her. Mom, Jessica said indignantly, did you complain to your brother about us? I didn't, I said quietly. Dan asked. And he was right to ask, my son said, because what's going on here is called exploitation of the elderly. What kind of exploitation? Travis exploded. We take care of her. You do? Daniel grinned. Interesting care, turning your mother into a free housekeeper and then blaming her for eating your bread. Kids, go to your room, Jessica said. Go do your homework. Kyle and Mia quickly left the kitchen. They were used to adult conversations ending in arguments. Dan, what do you mean by that? Jessica asked after the children had left. I want to remind you of simple facts, he answered. Mom owns this house. It's in her father's will. She has every right to live here, and no one can impose conditions on her. We never put conditions on it, Travis objected. No? Daniel pulled out his cell phone, turned on the recorder. What was that yesterday? Quote, "It's time you realize this isn't your home. We took you in, so have some respect for your hosts." Travis went pale. "Did you record our conversation?" "I recorded you humiliating my mother in her own home." Daniel replied coldly. "Dan, you misunderstood." Jessica tried to intervene. "Of course it's my mom's house. We just get nervous sometimes. Say the wrong things." "Sometimes?" Daniel looked at her sarcastically. "Mom told me how often you get nervous. Everyday humiliation, reproaches, insults. And yesterday, it got to the point of violence." "What kind of violence?" Travis was outraged. "She fell. She fell after you pushed her," Daniel clarified. There was a difference. There was a long pause. Jessica fidgeted with her napkin. Travis clenched and unclenched his fists. "So I want to remind you," Daniel continued in a calm voice, "who the real boss is and who should be grateful to whom for the roof over their heads." "What are you saying?" Jessica asked. "That you live in my mother's house because of her kindness and generosity, and if you can't treat her with respect, you can look for another place to live." Travis jumped up from the table. "You're kicking us out of our own house?" he shouted. "My mother's house," Daniel corrected. "And I'm not. No one's kicking anyone out yet. I'm just reminding you of the reality of the situation." "Dan, don't be like that." Jessica tried to reason with him. "We're family." "Family?" Daniel looked at her bitterly. "A family doesn't turn the older generation into servants. Family doesn't humiliate those who gave them shelter." "We didn't," she tried to object. "We didn't." Daniel pulled out his phone again. "Would you like to hear more tapes? I have several." Jessica went pale. Travis sat back down, breathing heavily. "What do you want us to do?" he asked. "Simple things," Daniel answered. "Respect for your mother, gratitude for taking you in, and an apology for yesterday." "We're not going to apologize," Travis said stubbornly. "You're not?" Daniel grinned. "Then I'll remind you of another fact. Mom has every right to dispose of her property, including selling the house." The words were a bombshell. Jessica gasped. Travis turned white as chalk. "You wouldn't dare," Jessica whispered. "Me?" Daniel was surprised. "What does this have to do with me? Mom makes the decision. I'm just advising her on legal matters." He turned to me. "Mom, do you remember that you can sell the house at any time?" I remained silent, stunned by what was happening. Everything was moving too fast, too dramatic. "I remember," I finally answered. "And that the real estate market is favorable right now?" Daniel continued. "Dan, stop it," Jessica pleaded. "Don't go to extremes." "To what extremes?" he asked innocently. "I'm just explaining the legal situation." Travis sat silent, his face gray. I could see that he understood the seriousness of the threat. "Okay," he said finally. "We may not have been entirely correct. We're ready to fix it." "Maybe," Daniel interjected. "Not quite right. Are you serious?" Jessica took my hand. "Mom, I'm sorry if we were abrupt. We're just tired, nervous. We didn't mean to offend you." Her apology sounded strained, but I could see she was scared. The prospect of not having a home sobered her up. "What about you, Travis?" Daniel asked. He didn't say anything, clenching his teeth. "Trav," Jessica nudged him. "I'm sorry, Rachel," he finally said. "I had a rough day yesterday." I snapped. Daniel nodded. "Not bad, but it's not enough." "What else do you need?" Jessica asked. "Assurance that it wouldn't happen again," he answered, "and a radical change in his attitude toward Mom." "What kind of assurances?" Jessica asked warily. Daniel leaned back in his chair, scrutinizing the faces of his brother-in-law and sister. He had the cold determination of a man who knew exactly what he wanted. First, Mom is no longer a free housekeeper, he said calmly. Household chores are shared equally among all the adults in the family. That's impossible, Travis objected. I work full time. So? Jessica doesn't work at all. Let her take care of the house. Mom is entitled to a vacation after 50 years of running the household. Mom can help, Jessica began. Helping? Not doing all the housework, Daniel interrupted her. There was a fundamental difference. Travis tapped his fingers nervously on the table. His face was reddening, a sign of growing irritation. Second, Daniel continued, no one has the right to raise their voice to Mom, especially not to push or use any kind of physical force. We get it, Travis mumbled. I'm not sure you did, Daniel countered. Because that was the norm for you, and the norm should be respect. I sat in silence, watching the scene. Part of me was glad that someone was finally standing up for me, but the other part was afraid of the consequences. What would happen after Daniel left? How would Jessica and Travis act when they were alone with me? Third, my son continued, Mom gets a say in all family decisions. What to watch on TV, what to make for dinner, where to go on vacation. Everything is discussed with her input. Dan, you're going too far, Jessica said. This is our family, our children. This is my mother's family, he replied stiffly. You live in her house, and family is not a dictatorship of the young over the old. What if Mom wants something unreasonable? Travis asked with poorly concealed irony. Like what? Daniel asked. Well, I don't know. Turn the music up full volume in the middle of the night. Travis, Daniel said slowly, stretching out each word. Mom is 72 years old. She's lived a long life, raised 2 kids, been a good wife and mother. Do you really think she might want something unreasonable? Travis remained silent, realizing the absurdity of his question. But the main requirement, Daniel continued, is a change in the tone of communication. No orders, no reproaches, no humiliation. Mom is not a servant or a sponger. She's the mistress of the house, and she should be treated accordingly. Jessica interlaced her fingers nervously. Her face was a struggle between understanding the justice of her brother's demands and her unwillingness to change the way things were. All right, she said at last. We're willing to change. Aren't we, Trav? Travis was silent, staring at the table. His jaw was clenched, sweat beading on his forehead. I could see he was struggling to hold it together. Travis, Daniel repeated. I'm waiting for an answer. Yes, he said through gritted teeth. I agree. Good, Daniel smiled. Then we'll start now. Mom, what would you like to watch on TV? I was confused. When was the last time anyone had asked me something like that? I don't know, I answered uncertainly. Maybe the news? That's a good idea, Daniel agreed. Let's go into the living room. We moved into the living room. Daniel turned on the news channel and made himself comfortable in the chair next to me. Jessica and Travis sat on the couch across from me, their faces tense. We watched the news for about 20 minutes. Daniel commented on the events, asking my opinion, acting like a loving son spending the evening with his mother. Jessica and Travis were silent, occasionally exchanging heavy glances. Mom, aren't you tired? Daniel asked. Maybe you should get some rest. I'm a little tired, I admitted. Then go get some rest. We'll talk to Jessica and Travis later. I got up from the chair and kissed my son on the cheek. Good night, everyone, I said. Good night, Mom, Jessica replied in a strained voice. I headed toward my room but stopped at the door. There were muffled voices coming from the living room. Daniel was still talking to his sister and brother-in-law. Now let's get real, I heard his voice say. What else is there to talk about? Travis asked irritably. We agreed to your terms. We agreed in words, but I've seen your faces. You're angry. You think my demands are unreasonable. Are they reasonable? Travis exploded. You want to turn us into servants for your own children. I want you to treat my mother like a human being, Daniel replied coldly. Is that so hard? Dan, we understand your concern. Jessica intervened. But you're taking a one-sided view of the situation. Yeah? How am I supposed to look at it? Mom can be, complicated, Jessica said carefully. Stubborn, forgetful. People change as they get older. Give me an example of her stubbornness. Jessica hesitated. Well, she insists on her cooking methods, doesn't want to try new recipes. Is that a problem? Daniel wondered. Mom's been cooking for 50 years. Maybe we should trust her experience. It's not just the food, Travis interjected. She doesn't adapt well to our way of life. Your way of life? Daniel interjected. Whose house is this again? Technically hers, but we've lived here for 10 years. Travis countered. We've developed certain habits, a rhythm of life. And now you want your mom to adjust to your rhythm in her own house? We just want a quiet life, Jessica said, without constant conflict. There will be no conflicts if you stop humiliating my mother, Daniel replied stiffly. There was silence in the living room. Then there was a creak of the couch. Someone stood up. You know what, Daniel? Travis said, and there was a threatening note in his voice. You came here for one day and decided to turn our whole lives upside down. But you don't live in this house. You don't know the ins and outs of the situation. But I know what my mother's face looks like after your parenting, Daniel countered. It was an accident. An accident? Daniel's voice turned icy. You accidentally got drunk? Did you accidentally start yelling? Accidentally pushed a 72-year-old woman? Stop it, Travis exploded. I'm sick of your accusations. Your mother is no saint. She can drive you crazy. What exactly does she drive you crazy about? Everything. Her unhappy face, her constant insinuations that we owe her something. And then there's her parenting advice. I listened more closely. What advice is he talking about? I tried not to interfere with my grandchildren's upbringing. What advice? Daniel asked. He kept telling Kyle to read more, Mia that she shouldn't spend so much time on the phone, minding her own business. And that drives you crazy? Daniel wondered. Grandma's advice to her grandchildren? She's undermining our authority, Jessica interjected. The kids are starting to think we're bad parents. Maybe we should listen to her experience, Daniel suggested. She raised the two of us. Times have changed, Jessica said. Kids today are different. Yes, they're worse behaved, Daniel agreed sarcastically. Whose fault is that? Don't you dare lecture us, Travis exploded. You've got kids yourself. You know what it's like. I do, and my kids respect their elders, and they help around the house, and they don't spend all day with gadgets. Because your circumstances are different, Jessica countered. You can afford to be the strict daddy once a month, and you can afford to be a bad parent every day, Daniel replied coldly. That hit the target. There was silence in the living room again. Look, Travis said at last, a conciliatory tone in his voice. Maybe we were wrong. We're willing to make amends, but your terms are too harsh. What are they? Well, the whole voting rights thing. It's not like we can talk to Mom about every little thing. Why not? Because it's not practical, Jessica interjected. If I want to buy new curtains, do I really have to ask permission? Not permission, opinion. It's her house, and she has a right to know what changes are planned. And if she doesn't want it, then we'll have to compromise. Daniel shrugged. Like normal families do? Travis sighed heavily. Okay, he said. We'll give it a try. But if your mother starts abusing her new position, then what? Daniel interrupted him. Then we'll have to rethink the housing issue. Interesting, Daniel grinned. How exactly are you going to do that? Kick the owner out of her own house? We could move out, Jessica said. Find a rented apartment. That's a great idea, Daniel agreed. With what money? You don't work, and Travis makes an average wage. Renting a decent place would cost half the family budget. We'll find a way, Travis replied stubbornly. And drag the kids out of school? Take them out of their environment? Explain to them why they can't live at Grandma's house anymore? If I have to, yes, Jessica said, but there was doubt in her voice. I see, Daniel nodded. So threatening to move out is your response to my demand that you respect my mother? We're not threatening, Travis countered. We're just setting boundaries. Boundaries? Daniel laughed. You're living in someone else's house and you're setting boundaries for your mistress? It's not someone else's house. Travis exploded. We've lived here for 10 years. We put money, effort, time into it. So what? That gives you property rights? It gives you the right to respect our interests. Who's going to respect my mother's interests? Daniel asked coldly. Travis was silent, realizing that he had backed himself into a corner. Dan, Jessica said conciliatingly, let's find a reasonable compromise. We're ready to change, but gradually. Gradually? Daniel interjected. In how many years do you plan to learn to respect my mother? Don't twist things around, she said indignantly. I'm talking about practical things. You can't reorganize a family overnight. Yes, you can, if you want to. And if you don't want to? Travis suddenly asked. If we don't like your terms? His voice was threatening again. I realized that outward acquiescence was quickly replaced by open resistance. Then Mom has other options, Daniel said calmly. What are they? Sell the house and move in with me. Portland has great homes for the elderly. Mom would get good money for the house, and she could have a good old age. The words had the effect of a bomb going off. Jessica gasped. Travis swore. You can't make her sell the house, Jessica exclaimed. I can't, but I can advise her, Daniel replied. It's up to her to decide. Mom will never agree, Jessica said desperately. This house is her life. Maybe, Daniel agreed. Maybe she'd rather live in respect than suffer daily humiliation. What humiliation? Travis was outraged. We're not humiliating her. We're not. Daniel pulled out his cell phone. Do you want to hear the tape from last night again? Don't, Jessica said quickly. We get it. I'm not sure you do. Daniel shook his head. You're trying to bargain, looking for loopholes, making threats, instead of just apologizing and changing your behavior. What if we apologized? Travis asked. Would that change anything? It depends on the sincerity of the apology, Daniel replied, and on what we do next. We're ready to apologize, Jessica said. Then go ahead. We're sorry, Mom, she said louder, turning to my door. We were wrong. I realized they knew I was listening. I walked out of the room, back into the living room. Mom, Jessica said, standing up to meet me, we want to apologize, seriously and sincerely. She looked worried, tears glistening in her eyes, but I wasn't sure if they were tears of remorse or fear of losing the house. We've behaved terribly, she continued. We'd forgotten who you were to us. We took for granted your help, your care. I'm sorry too, Rachel, Travis said, getting up. Last night I was drunk, angry, and I acted like an asshole. You didn't deserve to be treated like that. His apology sounded more strained, but I could see he was trying. The fear of being homeless was sobering. We want to make things right, Jessica added. A fresh start. Would you be willing to give us another chance? I looked at the kids who were standing in the doorway, watching curiously. Then I looked at Daniel, and he nodded almost imperceptibly. Okay, I said finally. Let's try again. The next 3 days passed in a tense atmosphere of forced politeness. Jessica and Travis tried their best to show a change in behavior, but I could feel the artificiality in every gesture, every smile. In the morning, Jessica asked what I wanted for breakfast. Travis said hello politely, even occasionally inquiring about my well-being. The kids were strictly instructed to be as obedient and respectful to Grandma as possible. On the surface, everything looked idyllic. But I could see Jessica's shoulders tense when she asked my opinion of a television program. I noticed Travis's fists clench as he held back the usual harshness in his voice, felt the weight of their gazes when they thought I couldn't see. It was a game, and we all understood that. Daniel watched the whole thing with a nonchalant look. He helped me around the house, played with the kids, and kept the dinner conversations casual. But I knew he was analyzing every word, every gesture of my tormentors. Professional habit and filial care made him the perfect observer. On Thursday morning, when Travis had left for work and the kids were off to school, Jessica couldn't take it anymore. She walked over to me in the kitchen, where I was washing dishes after breakfast, and spoke in a conspiratorial tone. Mom, she said quietly, looking back into the living room where Daniel was reading the paper. We need to talk. About what? I asked, not turning away from the sink. About what's going on. You know you can't live like this. I turned to her. My daughter's face was a mixture of tiredness and irritation. 3 days of constant self-control had clearly worn her out. Dark circles appeared under her eyes, and the corners of her lips were creased with resentment. What exactly is bothering you? I asked. Everything, she blurted out. This forced politeness, the constant tension, the need to watch every word. We walk around the house like a minefield. It didn't bother you before, I remarked, when I was the minefield. Jessica blushed. Mom, it wasn't like that. We just used to a certain way of life. A way of life where I was a servant? Not a servant. You were, she hesitated for words, part of the family, an important part, one that could be humiliated and abused and beaten. Jessica flinched at the last word, but didn't deny the obvious. Travis didn't mean to hit you. He just lost his temper. Is that an excuse? No, of course not, she said hastily. But people aren't saints. Everyone makes mistakes. Some mistakes are unforgivable, I said, fingering the bruise on my cheek, which was almost healed. Mom, Jessica took my hand. I know you're hurt, but let's be realistic. Dan's going to leave, and we're going to have to move on, and it better be in peace. Peace on your terms? On reasonable terms, she corrected. Mom, we're willing to compromise, but Dan's demands are too radical. Demands to respect me are radical? That's not the point, Jessica said nervously. The point is that he's trying to turn our whole lives upside down. Your life in my house, I reminded her. Technically yours, she agreed, but we've actually lived here for 10 years. The kids have friends here, school here. Travis has a job nearby. You can't ruin all of that because of… She paused. Because of what? A misunderstanding, she finished uncertainly. Daniel came into the kitchen at that moment. Am I interrupting? He asked politely. No, we were just finishing up, Jessica said quickly. What were we talking about? The son asked. Family stuff, Jessica said evasively. Daniel nodded, but I could tell he understood. He offered me a walk in the garden, and we went outside. The October sun was soft and warm, and the golden colors of autumn were playing on the trees. This garden had once been my pride. Now it seemed like a stage set for someone else's life. What was Jessica talking about? Daniel asked as we walked away from the house, trying to convince me to compromise. What did you think? I was silent for a long time, staring at the goldfish pond. The fish swam slowly in the dark water, occasionally floating to the surface. Their life was simple and predictable. No one humiliated them. No one forced them to be grateful for food. I think nothing has changed, I said at last. They play a role, but inside, they're the same. I've noticed that too, Daniel agreed. Yesterday, I heard Travis on the phone with his buddy. He was complaining about that annoying brother-in-law who'd come to enforce the law. What else did he say? That he'd be patient until I left, and then everything would go back to normal. I wasn't surprised. In my heart, that's what I'd expected. Mom, Daniel said, I have a proposition. What is it? To come to Portland with me, forever. The offer didn't come as a surprise. I'd sensed it was coming from the beginning. And the house? I asked. We'll sell it. The real estate market is very good right now. You could get a lot of money for this house. What about Jessica and her family? They'll find another place to live. Daniel shrugged. Travis is earning money. Jessica can go to work. They're adults. But the kids will survive the move. They're young, they'll adapt quickly. I pictured Jessica's face when she found out the house was for sale. I imagined how they would pack their things, look for a rented apartment, explain to the children the necessity of changing schools. I felt sorry for them, I admitted. I feel sorry for you, Daniel replied. You've lived in humiliation for 2 years. That's enough. He was right. In those 2 years, I'd aged 10 years, lost interest in life, become a silent shadow of myself. What exactly do you suggest? I asked. There's a great nursing home about 20 minutes from our house. Not a nursing home, but a boarding house for active seniors. It has its own library, a hobby club, a small garden. And I can visit you every day. And if I don't want to go to a boarding house, then you'll stay with us until you find a suitable apartment. The money from the sale of the house will buy a nice place to live and still have enough left over for a good old age. The offer sounded tempting, to start a new life in a new place, among people who respect me. No more being a burden, no more daily humiliation. Dan, what if I'm wrong? I asked. If they're really ready to change? Mom, he said seriously, I've seen enough in 3 days. They only change under pressure. If I leave, everything will go back to the way it was. Okay, I said after a long pause. I agree. Daniel hugged me tightly and warmly around the shoulders. You won't regret it, he promised. You'll have a good life. We went back to the house. The rest of the day passed in a heavy atmosphere of reticence. Jessica and Travis sensed that something important was going on, but they didn't dare to ask directly. The children were more relaxed. They didn't understand adult games. That evening, as the whole family gathered in the living room, Daniel announced the decision. Mom's moving to Portland with me, he said calmly. Forever. Jessica turned pale as chalk. What? She breathed out. But what about us? What about what? The house, children. Where will we live? The house will be sold, Daniel replied indifferently. The rest is your problem. What happened next was predictable. Jessica's tears, Travis's rage, the children's confusion, threats, pleas, attempts to bargain. But the decision was final. A month later, the house was sold to a young family with 2 children. The buyers were delighted with the garden, the layout, the quiet neighborhood. They planned to create a happy family life here. Jessica and Travis rented a 1-bedroom apartment in a bedroom community. They had to take out a loan for a down payment and a security deposit. Travis got a second job. In the evenings and on weekends, he unloaded goods at the supermarket. Jessica went to work for the first time in 5 years. She got a job as a salesperson in a cosmetics store. The children moved on to a new school. Kyle had a hard time separating from his old friends, but gradually adapted. Mia was more philosophical about the changes. She was a practical girl and realized that it was useless to complain. I moved into a boarding house in Portland. The room was small but cozy. A private bathroom, kitchenette, a large window overlooking the garden. The library turned out to be full of interesting books, and I found like-minded people in the gardening club. Daniel visited me 2 or 3 times a week. We had dinner together, talked about books, his work, his grandchildren. He brought pictures of his children, talked about their success in school and sports. Gradually, I realized what real family care was. 6 months after the move, Jessica called me. Her voice was tired but not angry. "Mom," she said, "how are you doing?" "Good," I answered honestly. "And you?" "It's hard, but we're getting by. Travis is working hard, and so am I. The kids are getting used to the new school." "That's good." "Mom," she paused, "can I come visit you? To talk?" Sure, she came back 2 weeks later. She looked older, more tired, but somehow more dignified. Work and responsibility had changed her for the better. "Mom," she said, sitting in the boarding house cafe, "I want to apologize. For real." "For what exactly?" I asked. "For everything. For letting Travis treat you like that. For forgetting who you were to me. For thinking only of your own convenience." Her words sounded sincere. I saw remorse in her eyes, but not an expectation of forgiveness. "You know what the worst part is?" she continued. "I realize now what it's like to be dependent on other people's moods. When Travis comes in tired and angry, when the boss at the store nags me about the little things, and I think back to the way I acted with you. And how does that make you feel?" Shame, huge shame. We were silent for a long time, looking out the window at the fall garden. "Jessica," I said at last, "I'm glad you realized that, but there's no undoing what you've done. I know that, and I'm not apologizing. I just wanted you to know that I've changed. It's good that you have. And we," she hesitated, "can we ever be a family? I've been thinking." The pain of 2 years of humiliation hadn't completely gone away. The trust broken by betraying your own daughter takes a long time to rebuild, but I could see Jessica had really changed. "Maybe," I said, "but it would be a different relationship, on different terms." "I know. And Travis needed to change too. For real, not just for show." "He's changing," Jessica said. "Slowly, but he's changing." Responsibility was taking its toll. She stood up and kissed me on the cheek. "Thanks for talking to me, Mom. And for the lesson. Brutal, but necessary." After she left, I thought about our conversation for a long time, about how sometimes in order to teach people to value you, you have to take away their ability to take that value for granted. A year passed. Jessica called occasionally, talking about the kids, about work. She came to visit me twice, for my birthday and New Year's Eve. We talked quietly, without the intimacy of before, but also without mutual complaints. I never saw Travis again. Jessica said he had become a more responsible father and husband, but he wasn't going to apologize to me. That was fine with me. I didn't need him to apologize. The kids had grown up. Kyle was a serious teenager at 15, helping his mother around the house, doing well in school. Mia, at 17, was going to college, working part-time at a coffee shop on weekends. Responsibility for the family's well-being made them older and wiser. On my 75th birthday, Daniel brought a large cake and a bouquet of white roses. We sat in the garden of the boarding house, drinking tea, talking about the life we had lived. "Do not regret that decision?" he asked. "No," I answered honestly. "For the first time in many years, I live for myself." "Don't you miss Jessica?" "I do, but the daughter she used to be. not the daughter who turned me into a servant. Do you think she's really changed? Yes, but too late for our relationship. Daniel nodded. You know, he said, sometimes the biggest lesson is losing what you took for granted. Wise words, learned from a wise mother. We sat in silence, enjoying the warm evening and the tranquility. Somewhere in another city, Jessica was putting the kids to bed after a hard day. Travis was getting ready for his night shift at the warehouse. They had built a new life on the ruins of the old one, a more honest, harder, but fairer one. And I finally had what I'd been denied for 2 long years: self-respect and the right to live my own life, the right to be a person, not a function, the right to dignity at 75. Some mistakes cannot be undone. One can only learn from them and move on. Jessica learned her lesson. I learned mine. We both got stronger, but we weren't together anymore, and that was fair.